Alright, welcome sports fans. This is the BnK Sportstalk Show. I'm Craig Koger.
And I'm Nick Bodkins.
And we're going to get it started with the news coming out yesterday. Andrew Luck decides to stay at Stanford and get his degree. What does this mean for the NFL draft?
Well, that means everybody else moves up. And, this is kind of surprising. We've seen this the last few years. Sam Bradford stayed. Last year Locker stays. And now Luck staying. And even before that, Matt Leinart stayed. Two of these guys dropped their draft stocks. I think Andrew Luck, even if he comes out next season, or even this guy will be just a junior, so he can even stay 2 more years, and play ball there at Stanford. I think he'll still be the #1 draft, even unless he gets seriously injured. This guy seems like he's the real deal. And now everybody, I think you're going to see a lot of underclassmen quarterbacks kind of come out now because they can move everybody up a couple notches.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Andrew Luck says he wants to get his degree, and I don't necessarily think that this is a bad move. Even if something happens and he does get injured, we saw it with Sam Bradford. He got injured, didn't play at all, and still gets drafted, the #1 draft pick, comes in the NFL, and still makes an impact. I think teams know that Andrew Luck is he's got NFL talent, and even if he stays in college a year or two, maybe doesn't play as well, he's going to be I think the top NFL pick whenever he does come out. And like you said, this makes everybody else kind of move up, and some of these other quarterbacks, Gabbard coming out of Missouri, possibly might be the #1 quarterback on the draft board now, and it's going to shake things up a little bit. But I think it was a good move for Andrew Luck. If he wants to stay in college, I think.
Yeah, you can't discredit a guy for wanting to stay in college. All the time we say in NBA that he probably should have stayed in college, and here we are saying this guy should come out.
Yeah.
So you tip your hat to him. It's just interesting to see. This is a lot of money he's turning down. We all know that. And it's a choice a lot of players wouldn't make, that they would go into the NFL, but it seems like he knows what he's doing, and this is what he wants. Likes to play ball at Stanford. Moving on, a couple players that are coming to the NFL, Mark Ingram and Ryan Mallett, both entered their names to the draft. What's your take on these two guys?
You know what? I think both these guys are first-round picks, especially with Andrew Luck coming out. I think Mallett moves up. I think he's a late first-round pick. There are some teams that need quarterbacks. There are some teams that are going to be drafting quarterbacks, and he's a good quarterback, and I think he's got NFL talent, and he can help a team out, and I think an NFL team will see that. I think he goes in the first round, and I think Mark Ingram is a late first rounder too. There's not a whole lot of real talented running backs in the draft. Mark Ingram has showed he's a good running back. He's a Heisman Trophy winner, and I think he's a late first rounder as well.
Yeah, Ingram, I think his stock dropped a little bit from last year. If he would have came out to this year, he didn't play that well this year at Alabama, but they didn't really use him, it seemed like, as much. He also got hurt at the beginning of the season, so it seemed like he was kind of not fully recovered from that all year. I think Ryan Mallett's probably about a 2nd to 3rd round pick. I think, depending on what happens with Cam Newton and a couple of these other younger guys coming out, it just seems like, he makes some nice throws, but will he be able to, get his feet set? He's a big guy. But these are some of the questions they talked about with Ben Roethlisberger, too, when he came out, and we see what he did there with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think both these guys, Mallett will move up now with Luck staying, so this is probably a smart move by Ryan Mallett because his stock may be able to rise. I think he played pretty well in that Sugar Bowl, a couple drop passes there, and he probably they win that game. So I think, going forward, that Mallett is a better choice now to come out instead of waiting.
All right, and moving on, Jim Harbaugh has been the hottest coach on the market. Tons of teams looking into him. He's got it pretty much narrowed down to staying at Stanford or going to the San Francisco 49ers. What's your take on this?
This is a huge take here. It seemed like he met with the Dolphins for a couple hours, and they didn't really they couldn't really offer him a deal there. The 49ers. It seems like that could be a good choice there. The AFC West, if he becomes a head coach there, they're probably the favorites, again, to try to take that division. If he stays at Stanford, it'll be really interesting because, now we thought Luck and Harbaugh would both be gone from Stanford and both making millions in the NFL, and they both could be staying. Harbaugh, he could stay this year if he doesn't like the 49ers job, and then to try to go back to the NFL next year and maybe take Luck with him, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think Harbaugh may stay and Luck, and they could try to win a national championship next season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the fact that Andrew Luck is staying in Stanford kind of makes Jim Harbaugh tempted to stay at Stanford as well. If Andrew Luck stays, Jim Harbaugh comes back, everybody's going to be talking preseason next year, Stanford as the national championship favorite team. And Andrew Luck, if he wants to stay through college, then he's going to be there 2 more years. Jim Harbaugh could sign a 2 or 3 year deal and still get in the NFL, in the next 3 years. Even after, if he does stay with Stanford 2 or 3 years, 4 years from now, he's still going to be a hot coach on the market. There's still going to be NFL teams interested in the guy, so it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out.
Like I said, it seemed like just 2 days ago, at the beginning of this week, we thought both these guys were going to be gone out of Stanford, and Stanford would be back to, before these guys got there, nobody really caring about them. And here, it looks like they both could be staying. Moving on, looks like the Dolphins are not going to go with Harbaugh. They're going to keep Tony Soprano. Are the feeling this so Tony Soprano's got to be upset, and here now they're going to have this strained relationship because they went after this guy. Don't you think so?
Yeah, I think so. It was kind of like the Dolphins said, we're going to put this guy to the side. We're going to go out and try to get somebody better, and if we can't, then we'll bring him back in. Obviously, something didn't go well when the Miami Dolphins went out to California and met with Jim Harbaugh because the same day the news came out that Sparano was coming back with Miami, so something didn't go well with that. Jim Harbaugh maybe just not interested in the job, not interested in going to Miami. But if I'm Tony Sparano, the feelings are a little bit different right now between you and the ownership of the team, because they kind of pushed you to the side, try to go out and get somebody better, and then you're kind of like the second resort for the team,
Yeah, these aren't even the guys that hired Tony Soprano. Remember, Bill Parcells and Wednesday was like, hey, they're the ones that hired Tony Soprano, and he turned this team around. This was a 1-win team before he got there, and 1 year he turned them around to the AFC Championship, AFC East Division champs. And here they are, they struggled a little bit this year. I think there's lofty expectations. It doesn't look like Chad Henne's the answer, so maybe they need to get a quarterback, whether it's via trade or via the draft, and try to groom a guy up. But I think this team still got some talent. They still got some, pieces that maybe next year they make a wild card. But it'll be interesting, with this relationship going forward. And Tony Soprano, like you said, they just pushed this guy to the side, some guy that they already had. They never even fired him or anything, and they went and tried to rue, Jim Harbaugh, and it didn't work out.
All right, moving on. News in today, trade in the MLB, Matt Garza going to the Cubs. With all the action going on in the NL Central, are the Cubs also a contender in this division?
This is a big what-if team. If they can get some pieces, if they could have Silva like they had him for the first half, and if Carlos Zambrano, he pitched well at the end of the year, if he can pitch like that all year, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Carlos Pena as well. This guy batted 196, and they went after him for a 1-year deal with a lot of money. And if Aramis Ramirez and these guys can stay healthy, with Matt Garza who's a 15-game winner, they can maybe contend for the wild card, or even maybe the top of the division. But that division now looks stacked with the Cubs trying to contend. It seems like this year the Brewers made the trade for Greinke. You still have the Reds and the Cardinals who are right battling until the end of the year for that division crown.
I think this does make the Cubs a contender, but I think the Cubs, like you said, there's a lot of what-ifs. This is kind of a cushion if maybe something doesn't work out with Zambrano, or something doesn't work out with Silva. You got Matt Garza, who's obviously a good pitcher. He's done very well down in Tampa. The Cubs gave up a lot to get this guy in here, so it seems to me like the Cubs are trying to contend this year. But the biggest thing for the Cubs right now is getting their offense going and getting the bats going, because the last 2 years that the Cubs have struggled, they have still been getting decent pitching out of their pitching staff. They had trouble in the bullpen last year, but the year before that, their pitching numbers were pretty identical to what they were in 2008. They just couldn't get the offense going, so there's still a lot of questions. Carlos Pena batted 196 next year. He's got to do better than that for Chicago. Aramis Ramirez has got to get it going. They got to get the offense going, but I like the moves that Chicago's making. They are trying to compete.
Yeah, it does look like it. This could be the last end of the year for a couple of these guys like Pugadome, Ramirez, and even Carlos Pena. If these guys don't perform, we might see a whole overhaul of that team going into 2012.
All right, moving on. Before we go, the 4 wild card games in the NFL, we're going to preview them and give you our picks. We're going to get it started with the Saints taking on the NFC West champion Seahawks. How do you see this one?
Yeah, I like the Saints in this one. The Seahawks had I called it their playoff game 1 win last week in Week 17 when they beat the Rams. I'm pretty sure everybody's on the consensus that this is going to kind of be a blowout. Matt Hasselbeck, though, he's pretty poised. I think this is could be his last hurrah there in Seattle as well. And maybe he'll give them a game, but I think for the most part, even without a running game, the Saints are going to be able to pick apart this team. They got too many weapons, and they need to get Reggie Bush going. And I think I like the Saints in about a 14-point game win.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like the Saints in this one. The Seahawks are bringing Matt Hasselbeck into play. That gives them a little bit of a boost. But like you said, the Saints got too many weapons. They're too tough. And these teams played earlier in the year. The Saints dominated that game. The Saints did not play very well against Tampa last week, but I don't think that's going to hurt them. They're going to come into the wild card looking to defend their Super Bowl title, and I think the Saints win this one.
Moving into the other Saturday night's game, Jets at the Colts. Who you got in this one?
You know what? I'm going to take the Jets in this one. Indianapolis Colts kind of struggled there mid-season. They put together a good run to get into the playoffs and win their division. But the Jets have been a team that we've been talking about all year. The Jets have the talent to compete with anybody. It just depends on which Mark Sanchez is going to show up. I think all year long I've been picking the Jets to go deep in the playoffs. I don't see them losing a wild card weekend. I'm going to take the Jets.
I'm going to take Peyton Manning and the Colts. I think they get this one win here. The Colts, they had to play well to get in. They didn't play the best of strength schedules, but the Jets haven't played well either as of late. I think right there in the dome, the Colts just seem to be a little bit faster. I think Peyton Manning will be able to, even with a couple guys injured, this team's been injured all season. I think the Colts will be able to get it done with Peyton Manning leading the way.
All right, and then moving on into Sunday's games. Big NFC showdown, Packers taking on the Eagles. How do you see this one going?
I like the Packers. I think this is the best game of the weekend. This is the toughest matchup. Historically the Packers haven't handled Michael Vick very well, but at the same time this is a different Packers defense. I think they get after Michael Vick. Michael Vick hasn't played well. We've seen what Minnesota's defense did to him a couple weeks ago. That game in Philadelphia, a game that the Eagles really needed to win, or else they could be having a bye week. And I like Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers is playing well. They got a lot of weapons, and this could be a shootout. I think Green Bay wins in a close game, but I think it's going to be a shootout at the same time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like Green Bay in this one. This is the hardest wild card game to pick. Both these teams have potential to get to the NFC Championship, but like you said, Michael Vick hasn't played well the last couple weeks of the season, and that Philadelphia offense is getting exposed a little bit of what happens when you keep putting the pressure on Michael Vick. And Green Bay is a team that can put pressure on the quarterback, and they have a lot of speed on defense to keep up with that speed that Philly has on offense. And on the other side of the ball, you got Aaron Rodgers leading the offense. Green Bay can put points on the board with anybody. I'm going to take Green Bay in this one.
All right, moving into the last game, you got the Ravens going to the Chiefs. The Chiefs haven't won a playoff game in since '93. Who do you like in this one?
You know what? I think that streak continues. I think the Kansas City Chiefs lose this game. I like what the Chiefs have done. They won their division. They played good football this year, but the Chiefs rely on the run, and Baltimore Ravens are a good defensive team, and they're good at stopping the run. And if the Baltimore Ravens can stop the run, that makes Kansas City Chiefs very one-dimensional. Puts a lot of pressure on Matt Castle and Dwayne Bowe, and you got Ed Reed playing safety, covering on Dwayne Bowe. When he's coming across the middle, he's got to know Ed Reed's back there. They got to know Ray Lewis is back there. And if the Baltimore Ravens can shut down the run, I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs have a chance.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs, there's a nice season for them. And I do think the Ravens are going to win this game. But maybe the Chiefs can surprise. They got a lot of speed and a lot of talent on that team. And maybe they're just too young and dumb to realize the situation they're in, and then they can surprise the Ravens. But I do think the Ravens, the more veteran team, they've been here, they've done that. I think they can win this game. I do expect to be low scoring because the Chiefs also have a pretty decent defense. If they can be able to contain Ray Rice, I give them a puncher's chance with the speed with guys like McCluster and Dwayne Bowe. And Matt Castle's played really well quietly. He put up a nice season this season. The Chiefs do lead the league in rushing, but I'm going to go ahead and take the Ravens just to the fact that they've been there and done that. And I just don't think Ray Lewis and Ed Reed are going to allow the Ravens to lose this game.
All right, that does it today, sports fans. This is BnK Sports Talk Show. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook at BnK Sports Talk, or email any comments and questions to our email at bnksportstalk@hotmail.com. I'm Craig Koger.
And I'm Nick Watkins. Thanks for tuning in, sports fans.